It's a little after 7 in the morning on Saturday morning. I'm out in the garage, and my objective right now is to get the brake bracket and the disc for the front brake or the passenger side brake off the car. And because the auto parts store opens at 8, and I want to get both of these discs up there to have them turned. That way they'll be done sometime today. I can pick them up later tonight or whatever, just in case I get that far. Because obviously I can't test drive the car without the brakes. So we're going to work on that, and I'll just basically, I'm not going to really film anything. I'll just keep you guys posted throughout the day. I've got both of my discs off the car, and I've got them in a plastic bag to protect the interior of my wife's van. And I'm going to run them up. It's about 10 minutes until the auto parts store opens. It's only about a 5-minute trip up there. While I'm there, I'm going to go ahead and grab the ball joints. I think I'm going to get brave and do those because I mentioned last night they're shot. And pretty much, I've replaced everything under the front end when I'm done. So it ought to be in pretty good shape for a few more years. I do want to mention something. And I have a neighbor who lives down the street. His name's Ram. And Ram and I met a while back. His daughter goes to school with my daughter. They're on the dance team together. And he is a super nice guy. And I'm going to tell you just how nice this guy is. It's kind of unbelievable. Last night, I had gone out to get the brake pads and the sockets that I needed, and I picked up the pizza, and I pulled into the driveway. I was getting out of my wife's van, and my car, the garage door was open, so you could see the car up on the jack stands. Ram drives by, stops, backs up, gets out of his car, walks up the driveway and says, hey, he goes, if your car is broken down, he goes, I have 3 cars. He goes, you can have my 3rd car and you can use it as long as you want for anything you want. He goes, treat me like a brother. You can, I'll give you the keys. And, I mean, that is a extremely generous offer. I did not take him up on it. I told him, I said, actually, my car is not really broken down. I said, I'm doing this work as it's a preventive maintenance or a maintenance after the fact. The car needs some work. And I said, my hope is to have it done this weekend. I said, if not, I'll take you up on the offer. And, to get to work Monday and Tuesday, at least just to drive to work. I wouldn't run around in his car. But I mean, wow, thank God for good, solid neighbors. You don't always have that, but I do, and I am very thankful. But enough said about that. I'm just going to go ahead and take these rotors up, get the ball joints. I'll be back, and then we'll see what's next. I'm sitting in the parking lot of the auto parts store. The driver's side rotor mic'd out at 1.19 something, and it's got to be 1.209. And the passenger side where I had the rub, oh my God, it was, I can't remember what it was, but it was horrible. It was so thin, they couldn't even turn them. So guess who ended up having to buy 2 new rotors at about 38, 39 bucks a pop. This job's getting expensive, but I can't think of anything else that I might need to replace. I got my ball joints, and I just got the joints. They offered me, it's about 40 bucks more, you can get the control arm and the ball joint. And I told them, let me try to knock these out, and if I can't, I'll just bring them back and swap, because I'm hoping to save that 80 bucks because I'm getting in pretty deep on this one. But I've pretty well got everything that goes under the front end ready to be replaced. So let me get back home and get back to work. Keep you guys updated. I'm back home from the auto parts store, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by removing the bearings from both sides. I've got my air ratchet, and I've got a 35mm socket on there, which is the proper size for the nut at the end of the CV joint. So let's just see how tough it is to get these off. I got the wheel bearings off both sides. Let me show you what that looks like. You can see where the bearing was mounted. Everything looks pretty good down there. And actually, they came off pretty easy, and they came off in one piece. I had seen several videos on YouTube where part of the bearing would come off and like the cup would still be inside of the fitting there. But luckily, mine came off in one piece. So real happy about that. And what I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to focus on one side at a time. And the reason why I wanted to get both of the bearings off is because it's easier if you can turn the wheel left and right to get access to the screws. For the tie rods and the ball joints, that's not so much necessary, and I wanted to make sure the car was the wheels were perfectly lined straight forward, or the
the suspension was lined straight forward to make it easier to remove and reinstall those parts, as well as to get the CV joint out. So I'm going to separate, I'm going to go to one side at a time. We're going to stay right here on the driver's side. I'm going to get the tie rod and the ball joint separated so I can move this out of the way, and then hopefully bring the CV joint out, and we'll get the CV joint replaced on the driver's side.
Well, it took quite a while, but I got the tie rod separated. That one wasn't too bad. The ball joint was a bit tricky, and then there's a bushing between the sway bar and the control arm that the bottom bolt was rounded out before I started working on it. I had trouble. 13 was too loose, 12 was too tight. I tried a couple of standard sockets. I just couldn't get a good fit on it, so I called up the auto parts store. They're $3.99 for replacement bushing sets, and they come with a brand new nut and bolt. So I said, to hell with it. I got the Dremel out, and I cut the nut off, and it came right out. Let me show you where I'm at.
You can see the CV joint laying here on the ground. It's out. I'm dripping a little bit of transmission fluid back there. I'm gonna have to put some more in the motor when I'm done. But here's the old ball joint. There's the old tie rod. I've just got the strut turned out of the way. There's the brake hanging from the strut. What I'm going to do now is this ball joint it's in pretty bad shape. I need to work on getting the control arm out of the car, and then hopefully by the time I get that out, my wife will be back. My wife and children. I was supposed to go, but because of this job, I sort of got sidetracked.
My daughter is involved in a group at school that does community service. And one of the things they're doing today is they are putting wreaths on the graves of fallen soldiers in the local cemetery. And the whole family's invited. I was supposed to go, but I got into this, and I hated not to go, but I knew, you know, I got to get this fixed. So my wife and my 3 children are at the cemetery right now placing wreaths, and I'm really proud of them for doing that. I think it's a wonderful thing for the kids to do. You know, they need to understand what these people did, the sacrifices they made for us, and we all benefit from that. So I'm going to get off my soapbox there. I have very strong feelings. I'm a very huge proponent of the military, and I have the utmost respect for anyone who has served. But once again, I'm off that soapbox. I got to get this baby fixed. So now, let's see if we can't get that darn control arm out of there. This ought to be fun.
The control arm is out. It really wasn't as bad to get out as I thought it would be. Getting the bushings off of this little piece here that connects to the sway bar was a bit of a job, but I've got a new set on order. I think I mentioned that earlier. I did find one problem. See the sway bar right there? It has this piece on the bottom that is broken off, and I really hate to have to replace the whole sway bar. It fits perfectly up in there, but I have contacted my nephew who has a portable welder, and I'm waiting for a call back from him. I'm going to see if he'll swing by, and then we can just run a bolt through here, hold that nice and tight, and have him tack that up for me, or actually just weld that up for me, and then I can put it back together. I hate to have to replace that whole sway bar because as I look under there, it looks like it's a pretty involved job, more than I want to get into. So
my nephew works on trucks. He is a truck mechanic. He basically, he works out of a shop, and he also does some of the remote stuff where he's on call, and they have a vehicle, and he'll drive out and meet, you know, drivers on the side of the road and work on their vehicles. He is very adept. He's very mechanically inclined. And if he says it can't be fixed, or he doesn't think it's a good idea to weld it, then I will go and replace the sway bar. But if he looks at it and thinks that, yeah, it's probably going to be okay, I'll go with his judgment because he works on this kind of stuff all the time. I'm going to sign out for a while. I'm waiting on my wife to get back. She should be back any time now. I'm going to grab a bite to eat, and then I'm going to head up to the shop at work and get those rivets ground out of that ball joint. On the passenger side control arm, I got the rivets. I had to grind them down, drill them out, and pound them out. But I got the ball joint installed on that side. And let me show you where I'm at on the passenger side.
Everything's taken apart. The CV joint is out. And I have the control arm off. And I'm on my way up to the place I work to go ahead and do the same thing to the passenger side control arm. On the driver's side, you can see I've got the CV joint back in. I didn't want to take the other one out. I didn't want to take them both out at the same time. And I've got the tie rod end off over there. It's ready to be reinstalled. Everything's looking pretty good. Get back from the shop. It's about 5:30 right now. We'll see how I feel. I probably will go ahead and put the ball joint in the control arm and get it tightened down and ready to go. I don't know how much putting together I'll do tonight. I may wait until tomorrow to go ahead and put everything together. The only thing I have left to take apart is I've got to take the tie rod end off the passenger side. But that was not a big deal on the driver's side. You know, it came off pretty easily. And that one's been replaced before, so it should come off, you know, even easier. It's not the original tie rod. So, at this point, heading to the shop. Catch you guys later. Well, I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm going to call it a night. It's a little after 7, so it's been an 11-hour day. I'm exhausted. I've got everything removed from the car, so the hard part of breaking everything loose and, you know, getting it off is done. Both control arms I've taken into work one at a time. I've ground off the rivets, drilled them out, punched them out. I've got the driver's side, I've installed the ball joint. I haven't installed it yet on the passenger side. That's where I'll start tomorrow, because I'm going to start putting the passenger side back together while I wait for my nephew. I'm not sure, he'll be over 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that tomorrow with his welder, and then we'll weld up that sway bar. At that point, I can start putting the driver's side back together. So I'm hoping putting it back together goes pretty quickly, but everything's done. I mean, everything's off the car that needs to come off, all the old components. So I'm very happy. And I'd like to thank you for following along with me today. And I will shoot some video tomorrow and keep you updated on the progress of putting the car back together. And when I take it out for its first road test, if I do finish tomorrow, I'll take it out for its first road test. I expect it to not track real well because I did count the threads on the tie rod, so I'm going to be close, but I really think I'm going to need to get that front end alignment done to ultimately get the car tracking right. Have a great evening. Thanks for following along. I'm calling it a night, and we'll see you again tomorrow.